Welcome back to the shop, my friends. Steve here at SKS Props, and this is part 4 in my HD Foam Samurai Armor series. Now, if you've not checked out parts 1, 2, and 3, I'd recommend to do that, because in part 4, I'm going to be fabricating the back of the Do armor, as well as the Watagami straps for his shoulders. And just like all the rest of the build, there are free PDF files available for this over on my website that you can download in case you would like to make your own. And just like everything else, this is made completely out of my HD Foam, which you can find over at Blick Art Materials. Be sure to pick some up and help support the channel. Now, the only thing that's going to be a little bit different in this particular video is I'm still going to go over how to fabricate all of the armor and the straps, but I'm going to speed through some of the painting process because I extensively covered that in parts 1, 2, and 3. So I want to show you what it takes to put the back of this armor together. Let's go ahead and get started. I'd like the project to mimic the front, but the back pieces are slightly different. I'm going to start with part A and trace and cut that out of some 6mm foam. To give the back a more form-fitting look, I'm going to cut a slit down the middle on the inside. This cut is filled with hot glue and it's going to help the back armor curve in towards the spine. Heat is added to the top of part A, and then small strips of 2mm foam are added to either side. This is going to help the top of the back piece curve. Part B is going to be traced and cut out of some 6mm foam 2 times. Like part A, heat is added, the foam is rolled, and small strips of foam are glued onto the inside. To match the front, thin strips of 2mm foam are going to be glued along the perimeter of parts A and B. Contact cement and super glue are going to be used to adhere all these pieces together, and you can tell with all the heat forming, the back has a really good curve. As a detail strip, part C is going to be cut out of some 2mm foam and glued into place. Like the front of the armor, parts D and E are also cut out of 2mm foam and glued on. Again, you could add any additional details that you'd like for this section. Parts F and G are going to make up the armor panels, and once again, those are going to be cut out of 4mm foam. This time around, because the back is slightly taller than the front, I'm going to be using 4 of part F and 4 of part G. 2mm strips are placed around the perimeter of all these pieces as well. A heat tool is once again used to make holes for the laces. With the fabrication of these armor pieces complete, I can smooth the edges and move on to the shoulder straps. Part H is going to be traced and cut out of some 6mm foam 2 times. To help keep the curve on these shoulder straps, part I is also going to be traced and cut out of some 6mm foam 2 times. Before I glue these pieces together, I'm going to go ahead and add my trim. I make sure to put the seam in the very back, and it's eventually going to be hidden by a cord. I sand and heat seal parts H and I, and these pieces can now be glued together using some Bob Smith super glue. Metal washers are once again glued down to the foam. These are going to help with the wear and tear from the cords. To distress and age the foam, I'm once again going to do the tinfoil technique. The foil is applied to all the exposed areas, giving it a nice embossed look. Behind all the metal washers, styrene is going to be added for additional reinforcement. The plastic is glued to the back sides of parts H and A, and then I can just drill through to open up the holes. Plastidip will be used to seal the foam, and red oxide will be the primer. After the paint has been allowed to dry, red oxide from Liquitex is applied with a 1-inch mop brush using no water. Liquitex cadmium red is added to the red oxide as a selective highlight. Dirty down dark brown is generously applied to all of the armor sections. After the paint had dried, water is used to reactivate it, and then with a damp paper towel I can selectively remove some of the pigment. To lock everything in, some Valspar flat matte spray is applied to all of the surfaces. With the red done, I can move on to the gold border, once again using Golden Brand Iridescent Bronze. Like I had mentioned in the beginning, for more detailed painting steps, go back and check out parts 1, 2, and 3. As a highlight to the gold, Utrecht brand iridescent gold is applied with a filbert brush. The two tones of gold just give it an overall richer look. Athletic lacing from Shoelace Express is cut to length. This time around, the 4 top sections get laced like normal, but when I get to the bottom 4 panels, it's a tighter weave in the middle. This is going to allow the armor to curve in at the spine. So to achieve that look, the armor on the outsides has to be spaced accordingly so the armor dips in. If you didn't want it to dip in at the spine, the armor plates could go straight across, just like the front. Once complete, the laces could be cut and the ends could be cauterized. Just like the front, weldwood contact cement and superglue are going to be used to glue all the armor panels together before they're glued onto the back. This just helps all the armor sections sit and look proper, since they weigh a fraction of what the traditional iron plates would weigh. With the top 4 plates secured, they can be glued onto part A. And notice how I'm pressing the armor in towards the middle where it created that dip. I can now glue the panels onto the sides of part B. And off camera, I did make note to line them up with the panels for the front of the armor. With the sides secure, I can now glue the armor in at the spine, and some additional foam strips were added for support in the middle. Now this process, even though it looks great, was quite a bit more difficult, so don't feel you have to do this. I somehow had forgotten to paint the black onto part C, so I'm going back to do that now. Dirty Down Rust is added to all the gold areas with a detail brush, giving it a really nice weathered contrast. After the rust had dried, I went back with some Utrecht brand iridescent gold as an additional layer highlight. I need 8 more washers painted up. These are going to go on the front and the back of the armor. Cords are going to run through these to strap the 2 halves together. Notice in the video where I'm placing them in the front and the back. Like I had done in other areas, styrene is added behind the washers for additional support. After the adhesive had cured, I can then drill through the foam and the styrene. With all the armor panels now in place, I can once again use my lacing layout template. This is just going to add some additional lacing details to match the front of the armor. The other part I need to replicate from the front is making sure that the armor panels have the strap that goes through them into part B. A heat tool is used to create the holes, and then I just glue the paracord into place. I'm once again using some small circles to act as faux rivets, and I'm going to be painting these using some Liquitex Mars Black. To make the clasps for the shoulder straps, I'm going to be using some thick PVC board and part J. This is going to be traced 2 times onto the PVC board and cut out. Now if you didn't have PVC board, you could also use wood. These pieces are treated just like all the rest of the gold with the painting and the weathering. Now since the last video, I determined I don't need all the excess foam down at the bottom, so I'm going to go ahead and trim that away. Eventually laces will come out of this bottom panel into armor plates down below. 750 paracord is going to be used to lace all of this armor together, and I start by cutting it to length and burning off the ends. This will cauterize the ends and make it a lot easier to go through the holes that I drilled earlier. The cords are going to be tied off in the chest piece, and you can see how this clasp is going to work to secure the armor. The cord can now be ran through part J into part H. This is going to be tied off on the back of part A. I checked to make sure that all the armor has enough space and the clasp works great. To secure the sides, cords are pulled through the front 2 holes on either side. The ends of these are frayed and tied off to give it a more interesting look. For the back armor, loops are going to be created on either side. The cords from the front are going to go through these, and that's how the 2 halves are going to be tied together. Now, one aspect of this build that I'm really enjoying is the fact that it's all practical. There's no cosplay magic when it comes to putting it all together. So no Velcro, no magnets. All these sections actually go together as though this was authentic samurai armor, which is great because it looks better, I think, for overall presentation. So it's really easy to display this armor or make it fit you for cosplay. So y'all can see the steps that I took to create the back and shoulder straps for this samurai armor. And don't forget to swing back by for part 5, where I'm going to be making the sode or shoulder armor to go along with this set. Now, if you are building any of my builds or utilizing some HD foam, be sure to tag me at SKS Props on Twitter and Instagram because I want to see your creations. Until next time, build your best with the best. HD Foam.